All right, let's talk about finding our way. We're all looking for that one thing, right? Our own personal North Star. But wow, in a world that's constantly pulling us in a million different directions, how do you even begin to find it? Well, in this explainer, we're going to explore how a practice as old as time, prayer, might just be the compass we've all been searching for.
I mean, does this feel familiar? Because every single day we are just bombarded by 1,000 different voices, all of them telling us what to do, who we should be. It's no wonder so many of us feel kinda lost, just adrift, trying to find one clear signal in all of that static.
But what if there was a lifeline in that storm? This is really the core idea we're going to dig into today. The idea that prayer is so much more than just asking for stuff. It's a direct connection, a lifeline to the guidance, to strength, and yeah, the clarity that I think we're all searching for.
All right, so let's start this quest for a purpose.
Here's the big challenge on this quest, right? The world is just so full of conflicting advice. You get it from social media, from your friends, even from your own family, all with the best intentions. But it all just creates this constant, I love this term, spiritual static. And it makes it almost impossible to hear that quiet, guiding voice, what we call God's will, and to find that unique path that's really meant just for you.
Okay, so now let's talk about our compass for clarity. So let's look at a classic example. Just imagine being King Solomon for a second. Suddenly, you're the king, responsible for an entire nation. I mean, can you imagine the pressure? It must have been absolutely immense. He had this massive purpose laid out for him, but he was smart enough to know he couldn't rely on his own abilities to get it done. And this quote, wow, it reveals everything about his priorities. Think about it. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for power over his enemies. He prayed for a discerning heart. He asked for the wisdom and the clarity he knew he needed to fulfill his role. It was just such a humble, totally purpose-focused prayer.
Now this brings up a really crucial point. We so often think of prayer as us talking to God, right? But what about listening? That's the whole idea behind what's called listening prayer. It's the practice of quieting our hearts and our minds to actually discern God's voice and direction. It totally shifts prayer from a monologue into a real two-way conversation. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, first, you have to create space for silence. And let's be real, that's way harder than it sounds, but it is absolutely crucial. Second, as you're sitting in that quiet, try journaling what you sense. Any feelings, ideas, or impressions that come up. And number three, probably the hardest part, be patient. This isn't some magic formula, it's a practice. You just have to trust the timing.
Okay, next up, aligning your will with God's.
Once we start listening, the very next step is alignment. Getting clarity is one thing, but the other huge role of prayer is to help us sync up our own personal plans with a much, much bigger one. I mean, look at this comparison. On one side, you have our desires, our personal plans, our ambitions, our fears. And on the other, God's purpose. Prayer is what helps us shift our focus from our own, let's face it, often tangled and limited perspective to God's much broader purpose. It's really a process of surrender.
And there is no more powerful example of this surrender than Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, he was facing unimaginable suffering, and right there, he models the ultimate act of aligning his personal will with the Father's divine purpose. And it all just comes down to this simple, but incredibly profound phrase, yet not as I will, but as you will. That is the heart of surrender. It's making the choice to trust that God's plan is greater than our own, even when, and let's be honest, especially when it's difficult.
Which brings us to our next section, finding strength amidst doubt.
Of course, this journey of finding your purpose is, well, it's never a straight line, is it? It is filled with challenges, and it's so important to hear this. Feeling fear or uncertainty does not mean you're on the wrong path. It's a natural, even necessary part of any meaningful journey. The real question is, where do we turn for strength in those moments?
Hannah's story in 1 Samuel is just such a powerful picture of this. She was in deep, deep distress, just pouring out her heartbreak to God. But here's the key. Her prayer wasn't just a single desperate request. It was this persistent, faithful act of bringing her burden to the only one who could truly handle it.
So what can we learn from Hannah's prayer? Well, first, we learn to bring our whole burdens to God, not holding anything back. Second, we learn to trust His timing, which, let's be real, is almost never our own. And maybe most importantly, her story reminds us that the very act of praying strengthens our faith, especially when we're in that waiting period.
All right, let's talk about the true foundation.
This brings us to our final and maybe most important point. We've talked about prayer as a compass for clarity and as a source of strength, but its true role is even more fundamental than that. See, prayer isn't just a tool for the journey, like a helpful accessory you pack for the trip. It is the foundation. It's the foundation upon which your purpose is built. It's what keeps you connected to the source of that purpose, to God Himself. Everything else, literally everything, is built on top of that connection.
So let's bring all this home. As we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a question to think about. Thinking about your own journey, your own search for your North Star. What is one fear or one uncertainty that you can bring to God in prayer, maybe starting today?